University considers its potential decision to ignore the First Amendment when punishing speech they don't like as, wait for it, an act of bravery. Yeah, you brave heart for ignoring the First Amendment. We'll see how brave they are when this inevitably ends up in federal courts. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we start at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, not the one in Florida, where serious consideration is now being given to ignoring the First Amendment protections in the Constitution in order to promote safe spaces on campus. To make our campus safe for liberal nonsense, we have to completely ignore the Constitution, and we will consider it an act of bravery.
Maybe they watched Braveheart before they got together and decided this. Probably not.
In the words of Daryl Philbin, you brave heart.
Well, they actually had a task force convene over the summer. It's always, I want to go to these universities where a task force convenes.
I love when you do the task force. You're all of a sudden doing Wonder Twins.
Karate chop. Hurrah! Well, it's like Captain Planet. But anyway, the president of the Miami University, again, not that's Miami, but the one in boring old armpit of the United States. Ohio.
Dr. Duke went there for one semester as an undergraduate.
And
My very first semester in college was spent in Oxford, Ohio, in the middle of nowhere at this dippy little liberal arts college, who then, 30 years ago or more, was getting rid of their name, the Redmen, and changing it to the Red Hawks. So even then when I was there, I lasted one semester before I had to get the hell out of there. So this tells you a lot, but in my Dr. Duke actually spent one semester on the campus of Miami, Ohio.
We'll get into the details of that at another time. So at Miami University, over the summer, they convened a task force of faculty, students, and staff, and they were meant to devise different recommendations on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they decided, the DEI task force, saying that they're going to look past the First Amendment as being a good start. We're going to look past it.
This is the recommendation.
And that the students and professors should just say, you know what, here's my civil liberties. You can take them right from me. I'll take the safe space over here.
That's right.
Yeah, that's where we're at.
This was the recommendation of students and faculty and administrator,
yes,
that for the good of liberal safe spaces, in other words, we just saw this in yesterday's show, right? That at Ohio State University, that when blacks commit hate crimes against whites, it's not the same thing because whites are impacted differently. Now what are you hearing here? We need to give up our civil liberties, our right to a free speech association to make very liberal kids feel safe and comfortable on campus.
Yes, and they have a bunch of recommendations, but the ninth recommendation, if you look at it, it's in a section on advocacy and partnerships. And the article calls it particularly a bold section. It explicitly tells the taxpayer-funded university, we always got to point out when it's a private university versus a taxpayer-funded university, to ignore legal considerations when disciplining students. I'm just letting it sink in.
Yep.
Ignore legal considerations when disciplining students and employees for any discriminatory speech.
And employees.
Yeah.
So what that means is if you're a professor at Miami University and you say something that the progressive mob doesn't like, we are counseling the university to ignore your constitutional rights as a professor to teach, to say, to think, to write, to speak. We're going to ignore that, and we're going to come after you, tenure or no tenure.
Yes, and see, this is why he lasted only one semester, because he knew. He saw into the future.
It already was
what would happen.
It already was an expensive, smug little liberal enclave surrounded by a relatively conservative Cincinnati, Ohio vibe. This was I've said this many times before. These smaller schools like Miami, liberal arts colleges, and these sort of smaller publics, be careful because no one's paying attention. If somebody tried this at Ohio State, it would have been national news. But the fact that it happened at Miami, Ohio, who nobody even really knows much about, they have a lot more leeway to erode away your civil liberties than they do at the bigger schools.
And that's why the task force said they want Miami to adopt a zero-tolerance anti-discrimination policy and to strictly enforce their existing university policy on discrimination, which is that long.
Right, and so they want a absolute ability to come after you for the slightest little I guess the word would be racist in their mind. Any microaggression, any slip of the tongue, any honest mistake you make that violates and this is always the thing, who gets to decide these things? They're not voted on. These things aren't elective. These aren't things that there's been a huge input from the taxpayers, the moms and dads who pay the fees to send their kids to the school. No, this is, remember how many times have we talked to you about all these schools and all their diversity employees? All the fact that you had Ohio State, we got 80 diversity officers. Michigan had 90-something diversity officers. Who do you think's making these decisions? It is the administrative gang now, right? These gangs of administrators who have nothing else to do, who sit about daily making hundreds of thousands of dollars each, finding ways to destroy your freedoms and liberties. And the fact that they actually recommend boldly. It's two things: that they actually boldly recommend ignoring the Constitution, and two, pat themselves on the back. Call it bravery.
Of course.
We're going to ignore liberty and freedom. We're going to ignore your personal right to be able to speak your mind, and we're calling that bravery. That would be like the Nazis saying, yep, we Kristallnacht. We busted a bunch of windows. We scared the hell out of a bunch of Jews. We ignored the democratic free markets of the former Weimar government, and we're patting ourselves on the back for being so brave.
Well, I mean, in 2020, if you sign a petition, you're so brave. That's where we're at now. It's like, at least there was action before, but that's getting off into another subject.
I wonder if these Miami diversity officers are actually leading nerfy lives. Nerfy, it's Nerf ball, right? Sitting on your biscuit, not willing to risk it. Darrow Philbin. Maybe these guys are playing all Nerf ball, and they think they got to be tough. They got to get their bona fides here.
Anywho, this is because they don't actually do things. They just write things or make a task force and then write out things. That was the 9th recommendation. You saw how dangerous that one is. It's in Pillar 3, and that's one of 43
pillars
spread across 5 sections. So they have a whole lot of just words that they put in there. Some of the categories here are dialogue and allyship, cultural consciousness, structural and resource support, and inclusion and accountability.
Well, I like the one allyship, right? This is no longer elective. Allies are people who willingly join your cause. Now everyone's going to be an ally. Mm-hmm. You will be an ally, or you will be in violation of our policy. And what does it mean to be an ally? It means surrender up your freedoms of association, the freedoms of speech, on and on and on it goes. And again, the part that just sticks out to me is look at how brave we are for giving the Constitution the middle finger. I would love to see that come back on these administrators. Love to say, okay, somebody takes these guys to court and some federal judge says, okay, since you are so compelled that the Constitution means nothing, and what you've done here is not punishable by jail, we're going to send you to jail for a couple of years, even though it's not constitutional, to give you what you want. Now, again, constitutionally, can I send you to jail for this kind of speech? No. But since you're so eager to have the Constitution thrown out, wouldn't that be great? I'd vote for that, Judge.
So we've done it. We've found that unifying factor when you take a look at the intersectionality ladder, and what kicks you off automatically of that ladder, no matter what other intersectionality bona fides you have, is if you say anything positive about the president. And
can I raise my hand?
No, you cannot. No.
You can't silence me. I will not be silenced.
I'm silencing you right now.
I will say this. So, shouldn't we have diversity escalators, not ladders? Aren't that discriminatory against the otherwise abled?
No, they should be elevators then.
What I'm suggesting to you is that your use of ladder is deeply hurtful to people who have alternative physical capacities.
Well, then we'll use an elevator.
Okay. The diversity elevator.
Off the
but
elevator.
See, I think you got to do escalator.
Because of Donald Trump?
Because what you're doing is you're taking away the stairs are there in the escalator, right?
Yeah, but
they're not used, but they're there. But if you put everybody in an elevator box, you're suggesting to the abled. See, this is a slippery slope.
Moving on. Oh, a slippery slope. Mm-hmm. Not everyone can get on that slope. Moving on, we're going to talk about Loyola Marymount University student Stephanie Martinez. She is a Hispanic female. She calls herself a conservative. She is a student senator. She sounds like a nice lady. And she's serving as one of the student government senators for diversity inclusion.
So she's Hispanic and female.
Yep.
All right,
but the conservative.
Just want to get that down there.
Now they're trying to oust her for impeachment. Because she decided that it's okay to tweet out pro-America things or pro-Trump things.
Let's call this what it is. She has said things in her past that were unfriendly to illegal immigration.
That too. So last spring, it all actually began when a progressive student news organization decided to search, to actively be like, I'm going to take a look at this woman's Twitter account.
Because she's a conservative.
So I'm going to, she must have said something to get them on her case. So they went through her tweets and they found that she voiced opposition to illegal immigration. Yep. And her fellow diversity and inclusion senator, Camille Orozco, has now brought forward the impeachment motion during the student government's weekly meeting. And according to the complaint, the official impeachment papers that she would like put forth, Senator Martinez's public statements and actions undermine the mission of inclusivity pertinent to her role as Senator for Diversity and Inclusion. I, Senator Orozco, maintain that the responsibilities related to this position are not only undermined, but completely contradicted by the impact that Senator Martinez's statements and actions have had among the student body. Can we go back to the tweets that she had put out? So, she has some evidence saying a close friend of hers works for ICE, and they can take you in if you have no legal papers. I, however, am a citizen. Unrealistic. Sorry.
This is after somebody tweeted it at her. I hope you get arrested by ICE.
Exactly.
Right? So she's actually defending herself.
And she actually has evidence because she knows someone who works on the inside and can take you through. Like,
I like this one. The tweet, her tweet. The same people advocating for rights, equality, and better conditions for illegal aliens are the same ones censoring freedom of speech, a right, defaming and initiating hostility for those Americans with divergent views. Sad. She's exactly right. Mm-hmm. And by the way, this is one Hispanic female now ousting another, right? Mm-hmm. This is one Hispanic female who is diversity personified because she's a liberal versus another Hispanic female who is not either legitimately Hispanic or female because she's conservative. Do you get the picture here? What you are banning here in the name of social engineering is any worldview that's not liberal.
So the fact that both of them are senators for diversity.
You would think, wouldn't you?
And inclusion, but it's only diversity and inclusion by Senator Orozco's terms, not what Senator Martinez has. Again, intersectionality, ladder, escalator, stairs, elevator, slippery slope, big hill, mountaintop, I don't know. Anyway, that tweet that you just read was actually from July 7th of 2019. So it took them, they went back months, and then they decided, Senator Orozco decided, okay, I'm going to put forth the papers for impeachment, and now we're in the process of, is she going to be impeached? Like, they actually have their meetings on Sunday nights, and they're in the process right now. They put forward that lovely change.org petition, as everyone does, and that got actually put out in May, and they're up to like 580 signatures. Whew, in all that time. Whew, so many people.
In other words, this is a completely unsupported waste of time. Yes, I'll be willing to bet you that the student government does vote her out, sure. And if she's smart, this young lady, Stephanie, she will sue.
Yeah. And she said she's going to fight.
Good. Watch how quickly they put her back.
But I like, she's a pro-smart woman as well. She says they can call me a Hispanic woman, a racist, all they want, but the fact remains clear that I did not say anything wrong. ASLMU is supposed to protect all student voices, regardless of political identity. It is more damaging to the integrity of ASLMU to discriminate against me for being a Trump supporter.
And the genuine, good for you, and the genuinely sad thing is that when have you ever seen this happen? When have you ever seen conservatives try to do this to liberals? Ever, never on a college campus.
That's because frontal cortex working. Meanwhile, across the country in New York, at St. John's University, we have an adjunct professor of history named Richard Taylor, who, by the way, is in the Marine Corps Reserves. He's a former New York City cop, that will play relevance in a moment, and a PhD history student. He now is under fire from the university because he was violating the university's bias, discrimination, and harassment policy for daring to make his students use critical thinking skills. What a jerk.
Well, as we saw yesterday with Ohio State and every story we've done today, if your critical thinking allows you to think critically in ways that aren't supported by the liberal lynch mob, your critical thinking is going to have to go.
All right, so he was teaching his history class made up of a whole 30 kids, 30 students, and he was talking about the Columbian Exchange, and he noted that global trade has saved countless lives from famine. It also harmed countless lives through slavery, abuse, and disease. Here are the exact details. While teaching, he made seven references to slavery and 5 to abuse of indigenous populations in a 46-slide PowerPoint presentation on trade and biodiversity. Okay. The penultimate slide is titled Negatives to Globalization, and the enslavement of millions is listed as one of those negatives. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he's saying slavery is under the negatives.
The cover your ass is big with this one. This guy has covered his ass from Monday through Sunday.
Yeah,
right?
So he got through all that. And then the next, which was then the final slide, is the discussion prompt, which says, do the positives justify the negatives? Like, we've done this in every class for my entire life going down to kindergarten. Do the positives outweigh the negatives? Meaning kids have to think about it. So, a lively discussion ensued, apparently, and a student said slavery could never be justified. The professor then clarified he was not justifying slavery. Again, a group of 30 students in this room with him. He was just asking students to consider the global trade as a whole. You would think, okay, discussion over, everyone go have lunch.
Nope, with today's snowflakes.
So, of course, then, a couple days later, a fake Instagram account that's called Radical Social Justice Warriors. Wow, this is what they're doing with their time. They decided to spin what the professor actually said, and they claimed that Taylor enticed them to justify slavery. And he poses a threat to the safety of our BIPOC, take a shot, Black, Indigenous, and people of color community. And the group then published a pre-filled email. They probably already had these in their back pocket. This pre-filled email that they could send out to the administrators, basically demanding that Taylor be terminated from his position. And that pre-filled email, by the way, had 300 complaints sent in. Mm-hmm. Again, 30 students are in the class.
And I'll bet you
300 complaints.
I'll bet you it wasn't 3 of the 30 who complained. Not even.
In the story, as it indicates, all but one of those 300 complaints came from this radical's account that they had gotten. So clearly it was just...
And this is the thing. This is the same thing that's happened to me in my Title IX complaints. They take what you say completely out of context. We were discussing in one of my classes Macbeth. I've said this before. I'm a Shakespeare professor. We're teaching Macbeth. Macbeth makes the clear point in that play that when Lady Macbeth tries to change her gender, it's a bad thing, it's a wicked thing, and it doesn't end well. Simply by going through the play we were reading, that triggered a Title IX. And of course, none of that was there about Dr. Pesta was teaching a play. Dr. Pesta was referencing lines from a play. Dr. Pesta went out of his way to trash transgender people in his classes. This is what they do. Sooner or later, the truth will out. Now, what happened to this fella?
So the department chair, Narina Rustamji, had warned Taylor that he was going to be removed from teaching. And so these complaints that got put against him, they went to his New York City, when he was a cop, file and claimed that they claimed that by the man of the same name had all these dangerous predatory behavior based on misconduct complaints. Okay, so all this is happening. And because it's a private university, technically, they can kind of get away with some things. Mm-hmm. So he may be removed. He is a PhD student. To be decided. It's time for some real education. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon is said to be one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world listed by the Greeks. Created by a remarkable feat of engineering that allowed lavish water in the middle of a desert, they nourished an ascending series of tiered gardens containing a wide variety of trees, shrubs, and vines, resembling a large green mountain constructed of mud bricks.
Now, of all the 7 wonders of the ancient world, a couple months ago, we looked at one. It was the first one we looked at is the Colossus of Rhodes. But this one is interesting. because the Hanging Gardens of Babylon is the only one of the monuments we don't know where it was. Don't know where it was, aren't exactly sure when it was, not completely sure if it even happened at all. We have a lot of evidence, and show some of the pictures, Mike. We've got images. Go to the next two slides. You've got some actual stone carvings from the era that depicts this kind of lush vegetation growing. Go to the last one there. You get a sense of this kind of oasis paradise that you see from these cultures. According to one legend, the Hanging Gardens were built alongside a grand palace known as the Marvel of Mankind, there you go, by the Neo-Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II, who ruled between 605 and 562 BC for his Median wife, Queen Amytis, because she missed the green hills and valleys of her homeland. This was attested to by the Babylonian priest Berosus, writing about 290 BC, a description that was later quoted by the Jewish historian Josephus. The construction of the Hanging Gardens has also been attributed to the legendary Queen Semiramis, who supposedly ruled Babylon in the 9th century BC, and they have been called the Hanging Gardens of Semiramis as an alternate name. The Hanging Gardens are the only one of the seven, and throw the stone one up, Mike. The Hanging Gardens are the only one of the seven wonders for which the location has not been definitively established. There are no extant Babylonian texts that mention the gardens, and no definitive archaeological evidence has been found even in Babylon. 3 theories have been suggested to account for this. 1, that they were purely mythical, and descriptions found in ancient Greek and Roman writings, including those of Strabo and Diodorus Siculus and Quintus Curtius Rufus, represent a romantic ideal of an eastern oasis garden. Or 2, that they existed all right in Babylon, but were completely destroyed sometime around the 1st century AD. Or 3, that the legend refers to a well-documented garden that the Assyrian king Sennacherib, 704 to 681 BC, or Sennacherib, as I've heard it pronounced, built in his capital city of Nineveh on the river Tigris. So it could be a hoax, never had it, could be something from a later time in Babylonian history, or it actually could be something that comes from Assyria, not Babylon. But again, this Edenic utopian fairy tale of a hugely lush garden environment, a Garden of Eden in the midst of a desert, has a trope that's been with us, certainly at least from the Adam and Eve story.
All right, just as a reminder, since Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube are demonetizing our content, we decided to go around them with our Patriot Club. With a one-time $99 tax-deductible donation, we're going to send you a handsome stainless steel tumbler as just a little thank you. We appreciate you. All you have to do to get signed up is visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us. Now, for the fun fact of the day, we're going to talk about the octopi. Did you know an octopus has 8 tentacles? Haha. But 6 of them are arms, and the other 2 are actually legs. They can regrow their arms, and they have what they call a mini brain in each of those tentacles.
In the words of the great 1960s philosopher Ringo, I'd like to be under the sea in an octopus's garden with you. And that's going to wrap it up for this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay many-handed, my friends.